Hi, I'm Dr. Angel Jackson with the Healing 10 podcast, and we believe when you show up daily as your authentic self, there is an increasing awareness of how great you truly are. Live your truth, live your purpose, and be you. Ladies, we are so excited that you all decided to tap in with us with today's episode. Now, before we get started, I know you all have been very intentional about creating those lovely vision boards right for the new year. Some of us have even written in our journals, we've even marked out on our calendars. Ladies, we have even started going to the gym. But I want us to take it a step further. I know that there's some women out there who is wanting to tap into learning how to navigate through transitioning into their career, their dream choice, their dream job, whatever it is that they want. And I know me personally, I've had the pleasure of working with Dr. Whitney Stewart, and she is the owner of her own consulting business, and she's going to talk a little bit more about that. But before we get started with this episode, ladies, I got to tell you all a little bit about Whitney, right? About Dr. Stewart. Yes, I brought her on this podcast for two reasons. One, yes, she is a believer. I mean, this woman walks the walk. She not only talks the talk, but she walks the walk. She is a faith mover. When I tell you she is a visionary, whatever she sets her foot out to do, whatever she speaks of, she makes it happen. And the reason why I believe she does that is because she's connected to the source, which is God. But she truly, truly has a passion for helping women and others navigate their potential throughout their careers. So when I think of Dr. Stewart, there's three words that come to mind. One, she is compassionate. I'm telling you, she has a heart of gold. Number two, she is driven. I tell you, whatever, like I said, she puts her mind to, she goes out there and she does it and she makes it happen. And three, woo-wee, she is soulful. She is soulful. So let's go ahead and welcome to the Healing Tent Podcast, the one and only Dr. Whitney Stewart of WM Stewart Consulting. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much. That was like so nice of an introduction. I'm just like, oh,
I'm telling you all, I mean, and Dr. Stewart, I hope you don't mind me going a little bit personal here, but I've known Dr. Stewart before she got the doctor, those two initials. I knew her as Whitney. We both attended University of Louisville together. And I have to say, she is a part of a great sorority. I wouldn't say it's, the best in my eyes, but it's the second to best. She is a, she is, in, I know Whitney's like, I'm about to put her in a headlock. She went there already, and we ain't even been into the episode for 3 minutes. But yes, she is a member of the one and only Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. And I mean, definitely such a great heart. She is a believer. But the one thing is that we used to work together at a middle school for Jefferson County Public Schools. And I'm telling you all, Whitney was giving everybody a run for her money in the science department. And I was just sitting there, in my small little world, doing what I do within special education realm. And we would have these different meetings, and Whitney would be like, "Hey, y'all, did y'all think about this? Well, let's try this." Or I was thinking of this, and I'm like, "Well, hold on, Whitney, we haven't even finished this first project. We're stepping over into the second." So she's always been forward thinking. And so when I found out that she was starting her own consulting business, I was like, of course. So, Dr. Stewart, if you don't mind, bring the community up to speed. Give them some information about who you are, what you do, where you come from.
okay. Well, thanks for having me again. This is my first podcast. I'm super excited. I'm an avid listener of podcasts, so I always like, ooh, I want to do one. So now I'm just like, yeah.
Yes.
Um, my name, like you said, is Whitney M. Stewart. My pronouns are she, her, and hers. Um, I feel like I'm just like a regular smuggler girl. I claim Mississippi as my hometown, but definitely raised in Kentucky, in Louisville, Kentucky, and most recently relocated to Houston, the Lone Star State in Texas. And I mean, other things about myself, I identify as a Black woman. Um, heterosexual, female, millennial, Christian, able-bodied. Those are some of the things that like characteristics about me. I guess you can't tell on the podcast. I'm single. I am without children. And then in terms of my professional stance and like things about me, I really have focused the bulk of my career on learning and development. I've worked in K-12, healthcare, nonprofit sectors, and higher education. But the bulk of my professional career has been spent in K-12 and then most recently in healthcare, focusing again on learning and development and helping drive organizational changes for the different companies, organizations, schools that I've been employed by. And with my company that I started in 2019, WM Stewart Consulting, I really focused my 3 services on the thing, like my skills, basically my skills, my gifts, my talents that people always ask of me. So people always ask me to do guest speakings. They always ask me to like come do a training. And then they always ask me some type of consulting, like, can you build this for me or explain how to do this for me? So those are my 3 services that I offer. And yeah, I don't know. That's about.
Yeah, I mean, and you do, and the one thing that we're definitely going to touch on basis, because this is a new year, new beginning, new opportunities, as we like to say ourselves, like a fresh start. And we know that a lot of Americans are really wanting to change their career. I mean, there was a recent poll that study that said, I think it was roughly around 52% of Americans have thought about really changing their career. And so when you begin to do the research, sometimes people don't even know how to start or where do we begin. The job market has definitely changed since it was, I know once I graduated from college, it was different. But then the more and more, we get tech savvy, the more, different platforms are given for those who are looking for jobs, you have to really begin to know where to start. And so I would like to ask you this question. We know you have a lot of gifts and talents. We know you've worked in healthcare, nonprofit, K through 12. You do a lot of speaking engagements. I was able to, hear you speak at the summit, the Show Up Summit, which you did a phenomenal job with that. But then also you really, really pride yourself into pouring back into individuals who are ready to take their career to the next level. So how did you know you were destined to do this work and transitioning into this platform, this work?
Yeah. So when I think about that question of like being destined, honestly, I knew I was like destined as a kid, but I always say like
Ooh.
destined for greatness. I have no idea where that notion came from, but I always knew that I was like different, stood out, walked a little different path. So I knew that as a child. And then that feeling that I had, wherever that came from,
Mm-hmm.
it was always affirmed by the adults and the others around me, because they started putting me in leadership positions and opportunities,
Mm-hmm.
and teaching and learning positions and opportunities. And I am a person who I'm the youngest of 5. So I have always been comfortable being in the shadows or being so and so's little sister, right? It was not something to be like in the spotlight. Like it was a negative thing in our household. Like if you was in the spotlight, you was getting in trouble, you just get a whooping. Like you did something wrong. So I never wanted to be like in the spotlight, have all eyes on me. So that was, I always shied away from leadership because I thought that, that's what
Mm-hmm.
it was. And so again, I've always been comfortable in the shadows. I'm just now becoming more comfortable with being in the light. And
Mm-hmm.
still navigating and learning how to do that and to be in the light. And I knew I was going to come into teaching and learning because teaching and learning is like what I knew. My dad's an educator. I have a host of aunts, uncles, cousins, principals, teachers, college professors, like, and I'm from the South. So I'm from Mississippi. In Mississippi, like, especially, where I came from, my grandfather was a cotton sharecropper. So it was, ideal for you if you were Black and you were smart to like go to school to be a school teacher. You raise up the
Mm-hmm.
next generation. Especially before like the Brown versus Board of Education
Yeah.
decision in, what was it, 1954. Before that, Black educators, it was like it was a big thing to become an educator.
Yes, we were thriving. We had our own schools. We were pouring into our communities. We had our own Black Wall Street. We
Yeah,
were intentional about planting those seeds and taking our knowledge and making sure that we're pouring back into our community.
absolutely. So I knew at some point I was going to do teaching and learning. And then as a child, I like played school for fun. I played school for fun. I was literally raised in the hallways of Wagner High School. Like I was always at a high school because of my dad's work. I was always around kids, and then the other adults around me noticed that I had a great deal of patience. And that I was really good at like explaining stuff to people, like taking my time with kids. So they were like, you should do tutoring. You should be a teacher. Like, so I knew I was going to teach at some point. And so when I think about my transition in my career, the transition really happened because I started to broaden my perspective and learn that you can teach in multiple ways. I just didn't know that
Yes.
before because, like I said, everybody in my family's taught in school, those types of teachers. So when like kind of like what you said, when I graduated from my doctoral program, I kept on getting asked to do certain things. So I'm like, okay, people are always asking me to do these things. One of my mentors was like, you should monetize your skill set. Like people will pay for that. So that's how I started my business. And then I started to look outside of the traditional K-12 realm for educate, learning, and development jobs because I started to learn about them just by talking to people, networking, and they just like kind of put me on. I'm like, oh, so learning and development does it. And I mean, when you think about it, it's
Yeah.
like, well, teaching and learning happens everywhere. But I just was not aware, had not been exposed to it yet. So that's kind of what led my transition. Is like my perspective was broadened. I co-authored this paper with some colleagues of mine, and the title was "The Shoes No Longer Fit." And that's
Mm.
kind of the same idea that happened with me. I'm like, this no longer fit. This paradigm, how this looks, it no longer fits. So let me try something else and try to find another fit.
Yes, and I'm so glad you brought that up. I just finished reading this book called "Be a Triangle," and and basically she puts it just like this. She says, "More often than not, you will find yourself bumping against the rules. It is up to you to decide if you will put aside your individual desires and keep eating from the platter, or break free from social expectations and design the life you truly want." And so basically she says we must understand that the platter we are served does not always serve us. And what I took from that is basically what you just said in reference to the shoe. Like I think oftentimes we as individuals, especially sometimes within the Black community, especially educators, because I come from a line of family of educators as well too, they have it in this mindset, okay, you're an educator, so K through 12. You're an educator, so you're going to be a professor or whatever it may be. But it's when you begin to understand and go inward in your relationship with God and realize that, hey, yes, this may have suited me in this particular season or seasons. However, it's time for me to take my gifts and talents and transition them somewhere else on a larger platform, which is like you said, yes, you are the youngest of five and you were so used to being in the shadows, but now it's time for you to rise and come out of those shadows and begin for you to let your gifts and talents, be known. Because with the work that you do, and when you look at your website and all the various different, community partnerships and, places that you have been able to connect with and train and businesses, you've been able to shift people's narratives and perspectives and when it comes to education and how that looks. And so I wanted just to ask you this particular question because I know with me personally, whenever I step into a room, whenever I go into any type of space, I mean, it can be if I'm in a 9 to 5, it can be when I'm, going to a basketball game, I can be in a church, I can be at a training, I can be at a conference. Why do you think it's so important for we as Black women to show up as authentically ourselves in spaces that may not look or represent who we are?
Yeah. I think that when we show up as our authentic selves, we make space for others to do so. And that's like
Yes.
my little personal mission statement. It's like, it really is. Like, I show up fully as myself, like, I'm a hot mess. I don't have it all together. Like just being very clear, transparent about where I am, what I'm doing. That gives other people permission to say, okay, well, I can take my mask off too. It's not all together, or this is where I'm struggling, this is where I need help, or this is what I don't know. Um, you know, my parents always used to say, like, there's no dumb question except the question that didn't get asked. And so I feel like that is really important, that we sometimes take that mask off, ask questions, go seek out the knowledge. Like there's going to be a lot that you don't know, but stay curious. And so when you talk about entering into spaces where people don't look like like worked in science, there's not many
Yes.
tech degrees. There's not many of us. What I'm saying? Like leadership, not many of us, so when I think about the healthcare, not always many
Yes.
of us, so when I think about those different, I've had a lot of practice being the only or one of the few, just like in growing up, had a middle class upbringing. So I have gotten comfortable with, like, I know that I've accepted, like, I'm probably going to be the only one. I'm welcomed, like, I'm happily welcoming the surprise when I'm not. I'm like, my people.
I tell people all the time as that, because I have people ask me at times throughout my life, and yes, I've been brought up in, a middle class, family as well. And so it's like, due to me knowing who I'm walking with, meaning I know I'm walking with God, but then I also know that I have so many ancestors that came before me and that is with me and that are guiding me each and every step along the way to help me to be able to bring forth light. And like you said, you say this on your website, it is part of your mission. You say, this is where differences are celebrated and you want to be able to work together. And I think it goes with us being able to be intentional in reference to how we show up and making sure that we are understanding and knowing who we are with our biases, but then making sure that at the end of the day, we're still showing up and doing the work of God, because I know that you're a believer. And knowing that all these different things that may come your way, especially you owning your own business, like you said, you are a Black female woman scientist. You're a science teacher. You're in tech. You have your degree in technology. You have your doctoral degree from one of the, I would say one of the most prestigious universities. And I would have to say that because University of Louisville is great. Hands down, I learned so much from U of L and just all the experiences. They challenge you. They challenge you. And I think that's really good to prepare you to come out, into the world. And so by you having all this different experiences, right? When did you know it was time for you to leave the classroom, like leave the K through 12 and branch out into this new world that you're in right now?
Yeah. Okay. Hold on. Before I answer this question, I want to circle back because I wanted to say something. I was like, I don't want to cut her off.
No, you're fine.
Kanye, like, I'm gonna let you finish. But
oh yeah, go ahead.
first thing you said, when we were talking about just why do we show up to the space authentically? If I had not, I would have never met you. So going back to what you were saying earlier, how we met, we were in the same class. Wasn't many Black people in this geology class. We were both sitting in the front. So it's a science class. Again, science class. We're sitting in the front. It's not many of us. So I'm like, okay, let me go try to be friends with this person. Right. So it's like, but if I hadn't been my regular self, if you hadn't been your regular self, we would have did like all the other students. Sat
Yes.
where we could, get in where you could fit in, whether it's the front to back, not ask questions, but we was literally both in the same row. You on one side, I with me on another. So it's like when we show up as our authentic selves, like just bringing in that faith perspective, like we allow God to be able to show up for us, right?
Yes.
Like there was a reason that I met you then, because when I went to the school and we got the job at the school, you got hired before me. You were there before me. So it's like I had a welcome, I couldn't have,
Yeah.
that wouldn't have happened the way it happened had I not shown up the first time as
Hmm.
myself. So it's like things like that. He can't, everybody else is already taken. So if I
Yeah.
act like them, if I act like them or do what they do, I'm gonna get the same things they got. I'm gonna need I need God to give the salt bay. I need him to give me
Yes.
extra. I want to get a little extra. I want mine to hit a little different than everybody else's. So when you were saying, I'm like, yes, yes, everything you're saying. Yeah.
Yes, and it's so true because at the end of the day, when you think about how you want to show up in being in this space, it's like we knew from our upbringing when we have certain opportunities to be in the leadership role or getting our degree or getting a master's or getting your doctoral degree, you know what comes with that. And it's not just about, oh, yeah, I got my doctoral degree. Okay, no, it's like, what are you going to do with that degree? How are you going to go back and plant those seeds and help others elevate and pour back into? And that is something that you do on a daily basis. And so, this is one question that I will say, and I'm going to give you all a little context. Okay. So, about a year was, I think it's probably about a year ago, I reached out to Whitney. I can't remember. It was just like a check in, I think.
Yeah.
And I'm like, girl, look, I'm an assistant principal. God is calling me to do something else. I don't know what it is, but I really need to leave where I'm currently at. Like, I've been with this company for, I think, like 12, 13 sometime years, and I just need a fresh beginning. But this is all I know. And, so for some, God put in my spirit to reach out to you. I had no idea that you had already made the transition from K to 12 into healthcare. And I'm telling you all, Dr. Stewart was like, Dr. Angel, she was like, Angel, look, you can do this. If I can do this, you can do this. She
Absolutely.
sent me a boatload of resources. She helped prepare me to get ready for my next transition, and which was me starting my own business, and then helped me to be able to shift my perspective into what I'm doing right now. And so, what I wanted to ask you is that what are some steps that individuals can take before they actually start looking for their dream career, or they're wanting to transition to another world or another, position within the world of education?
Yeah, I would say the first step for me is to highlight, if you don't know them, identify, but then once you do know them, highlight what your skills and your talents are. And I have a good resource. I'm in my office, so I'm like, I have a good resource. Can I share books
Yes,
and stuff?
yes,
Oh,
please share. We'll put these in the share notes. Yes, yes, in the
okay.
show notes.
So, this book, Strength Finders, taking that Clifton Strengths test, there is a $5 Clifton Strengths. I mean, no, it's the top 5 score, and that's like
Okay.
maybe $20. Excuse me, it's the top 5 scores, but it's only like $20. Then they have another one where they give you your full 34 report, and I want to say that one's like maybe 45 or $50. And I know that might be pricey for some people, but I would definitely recommend, if you have not taken that assessment, try taking that assessment. I think that will help you if you don't know what your skills are and your gifts and talents are, because it literally gives you a printout of, these are what your top strengths are, these are where your weaknesses are. And so it gives you something to build off of. And for me, what I really valued about Strength Finders is that it gave me the language to the things that I consistently do. So like, I'm everybody's like, oh my goodness, you're such a planner, you're da-da. And I am. But really, what does that look like in the professional world? I'm strategic. And I
Yeah.
do think very strategically about like pretty much everything. That's just how my mind works, but like pretty much everything.
Yes.
So or I always knew I was very good with like connecting with people, things like that. We talked about, my interest in learning and development. I knew I was going to be a teacher.
Yeah.
So one of my top 5 strengths is a learner. Like, okay,
Yes.
of course you would be a learner. You're someone who likes the process of learning, not necessarily getting the degree, but like learning something new. And you know how I told you earlier, I love podcasts. I'm always listening to something because I'm like, what else
Yeah.
to learn?
What else is it to do?
Yes. So, and like that skill of one of the strengths also is a connector. And I'm like,
Yeah.
yes, like that is what it's called when I'm able to just, find commonality in other human beings. Like, and then one of my other ones, which I was surprised about the language, but like I said, it gave me the language. The other skill was maximizer. And I always would be like, I just do the most. I'm extra. I just do the most. But that's really a skill, like even when people
Yeah.
like, can you look over this and give me feedback? And then I'm like, I'm giving the editor eye. And they're like,
You got that red pen out.
yeah. And they're like, I didn't know it was that deep. I'm like, do you want me to like, but that is my skill. That's my strength of being a maximizer, taking something that's good and seeing how we can make it better. Like that continuous process improvement. Like those are things, but I didn't have some of that language. So I would definitely say identify and highlighting your strengths. Other things, if you want to like continue to transition your career, I would say next is identify what your transferable skills are. So like for instance, if you come from a teaching and learning background, your transferable skills would be facilitation, right? Training,
Yes.
curriculum design, instructional design. All of those things are what you do as a teacher daily. Management, right? You're
Yes.
managing multiple class sections and grades, evaluations, your performance evaluations. Like you're doing that every day when you're grading kids, grading their work, or if you are a PLC leader. So thinking about how can I take the skills that I do in my current job and what does that look like in my future job? I will also encourage listeners to think about learning the lingo. So if you
Yes.
want to move into a new industry, figure out what the new language of that industry is. So like for instance, in education, we might say you went to a professional development, you went to a PD. But in healthcare, it's gonna be something different, right? You might
Yeah.
go to a conference, you might go to a leadership development course, but a lot of that is just professional development, or you might go to a
Right.
training. So learning the lingo, and if you need help with learning the lingo, like I know it's about to sound crazy, but like Google, Google, like Google the job, go on YouTube. Like there's pretty much any videos, and you'll start to see once you watch a few, you'll start to see like, oh, okay, this is a credible source or not. So like start looking at credible sources of who's explaining the language, the industry jargon to you
Yes.
in a way that you can apply that to your transferable skills. And then I would say another thing, if you want to really transition your career, is start to network. Woo, I could preach like a whole story. That's a whole nother podcast.
Yeah, and I'm gonna have to bring you back because networking is key. Like I sat down and had a really great, brunch with another entrepreneur, and she was just like, Angel, network, network, network. Like she's like, as soon as she said, now I've been networking these streets, and I'm like, I'm so proud of you because I've seen like you are just exploding. But yes, you're absolutely right. Networking is key. Hitting that pavement.
Yeah. So I mean, literally, that could be through your LinkedIn. That can just if you're somebody who's like shy, like again, I'm somebody who I'm not really putting myself out there like that. So it's like every time you might go to a restaurant, see your old classmate, and they're like, "What are you doing?" Well, I'm thinking about leaving teaching. I'm ready to, just tell people, start speaking it. Start speaking what you're about to do.
That's right.
And telling, and that's another thing. Speak your truth. Speak what you
Speaking into existence.
Yes, it's existent. But I started sharing with people like I've just finished school. I'm looking to do, woo woo. And so people were like, oh, okay, yeah, I'll look over your resume. Like, I had friends who were non-teachers, looked over my resume and was like, I don't know what this teacher speak is, so they told me some of the language, that goes back to that learning the lingo.
Yes.
I learned about different jobs in different industries because I talked to friends who were in different industries. So that network thing is so key. One job that I applied for and got, one person who was a friend of mine, a casual friend, we weren't close, but I see you at the bar. We have similar that kind of casual friend.
Right.
He's nice, and he worked at that company, and he was like, "Put me down as a reference." Like for you, I
Mhm.
know someone that works at this company. So
Yeah.
people will sometimes extend their network to you. Um, or I just relocated to Houston. I met a girl. Okay, a girl I know.
Mhm.
Okay, you remember because you were there. So at the conference I saw you at, saw
Yes.
girl, yes, saw a girl from elementary school. Swear, I put this on. I can make.
Really? Oh, wow.
I never forget a face. I saw this girl
Yeah.
from elementary school. Told her what was going on. I'm like, girl, moving to
Mhm.
Houston next month. Trying to figure out. She was like, oh my goodness, one of my college friends lives in Houston. I'm gonna put you in a group text together. She puts us in a group text. Me and this other
Okay.
young lady, we text back and forth. Never met, nothing. We're just going off
Yeah.
a mutual friend that I knew from elementary school. So I get here, get myself settled, and I'm like, hey, I want to meet you in real life. She's like,
Mhm.
come to my step show. She's a step coach, a step show
Mhm.
or a step team coach, excuse me. She's like, come
Okay.
to their presentation for the Harvest Festival at church. I'm like, boom,
Okay.
okay, I'll come. I pull up again, 30 minutes away from where I live. Don't know this girl, I ain't met. So I honestly, to be honest, be completely transparent. I'm gonna be so embarrassed when I hear this back later on. But
You're fine.
yes, but I didn't know how to pronounce her name. I
Oh,
thought it
yeah,
was
I've been there.
didn't know that. I just
Yeah.
read it, and then
Yeah.
so I meet the young lady. I call and like, hey, I'm here. She's like, come over here. So I came over, and then she introduced me to three of her friends. I started talking to three friends. Two
Mhm.
of them are my sorors. One of them
Okay.
is her
Good.
sister. Um, and then they say her name, so then I learned how to say her name.
So
I'm
you
like,
know how to pronounce.
like, they're like, how do you know her? I'm like, today's our first day meeting. But from that elementary school friend that I saw at the conference in September,
Mhm.
come here, whole different state, whole different city, meet this girl. She introduces me to three more people. And one
Mhm.
of those people was like, hey, I work at this company in St. Louis. Let me put you onto a job here. And she's edited some of my
Wow.
work for me already. The other girl is a chef. She was like, when
Wow.
your family comes in town, like you can come to a cooking class. The other girl is a sorority sister. So she was like, when you're ready, we can go to one of the different chapter meetings. So it's like,
Wow. Yes, that networking.
you gotta work the network, and that comes back to that being your authentic self. So if I came down here, lying
Mhm.
or putting on a mask because I don't
Yeah.
want the ugly to be seen, I would
Yeah.
have missed all these beautiful opportunities that God had
Yes.
set up for me. So network. That's my last thing. I feel like
It's
I've
that's important, yes, and we will have those key points in the show notes because at the end of the day, like you said, it's about you being willing to show up as your authentic self. That's what we stand for on this podcast, but then also through life. That is the way that God is going to be able to use you and for Him to bless you, for God to bless you. But I always like to say, you never know what God is up to. You never know. And that's the beautiful thing about life is that we are all on this journey and we want to be successful, but we also want to help others be successful. And that is something that you always do. So I want to ask you this last question.
okay.
What are some words of wisdom or advice or gems that you would like to share with our listeners today who are really passionate about growth, about elevation? They want to seek that new career, they want to seek that new position. What are some things that you want to share with them?
Okay. Man, that's a tough one. I mean, it's easy question, but it's like still tough. Wisdom. Um, One would be uncompromising on your values. Um,
Mm,
well, first, I guess number one should be if you don't know your values, identify them. So I have like two that are really kind of like my guiding lights, and that is growth and spirituality. That's my barometer by like I measure everything. Like, is this going to impact my growth? Is this going to impact my spirituality? So like knowing what your values are and then be uncompromising on those.
mhm.
Um, because in 2023, like where you work for a black and a brown person, um, it literally could be life or death. And
Yeah.
I mean that wholeheartedly. I don't say that lightly, because we spend on average like 7.8 hours at work. That's like a third of your day is
Yes.
at work. It has to be somewhere where you're in alignment with your values, because if not, a third of your day you spent outside of your values,
Hmm.
like being dishonest, disloyal, unauthentic, to
Right.
yourself. Like, ooh, and
That's draining.
yeah.
That's draining. Life is too short.
Yes, it's draining. It tears on your spirit. It blocks
Mhm.
you from the other blessings that you're supposed to be receiving, like all of the
Mhm.
above. So, yeah, those are really my words of wisdom, that stay grounded,
Mhm.
because um in the world around you, things are shifting, moving, and people will normalize what has been normal for them.
That's
So
right.
you can't see different, right? So, like I told you earlier, I grew up, a lot of people as educators, thought I had to be in a K-12 system. I'm still an educator. I'm just not in a K-12 system, right? But
Right.
it was because I was able to embrace a wider range and a wider perspective of how something could be done. So,
Mhm.
you know, don't let someone else. So that goes back to staying grounded. Like, it was spoken to me. It wasn't spoken to everybody else. So they may not they may not catch the wave, but it
Right.
so like, and I don't know what the wave, I don't know where the wave's gonna take me, but I'm gonna ride it because it was for me. But it's very easy when you're not grounded and you're not sure of these things. It's easy to say, well, so and so said this, my parents said that, my family said, like, people gonna be in your ear, right? Like, you're going
Yeah.
to spirituality. Satan don't want you to get what God has for you.
That's
Um,
right.
because if you do, then you have to give God the glory. He doesn't want
Yeah.
that to happen. So yeah, that's staying grounded, because man, and this world's crazy. So it's like,
And that's key. I think those are three powerful words to take away and gems to leave our listeners, understanding that one, am I growing, like that growth? Two, spirituality, is it connecting to my spirit? And then three, grounded, because at the end of the day, you have to make sure that you have a strong foundation of understanding who you are, how you're showing up, what do you want to be able to give to this world, to this universe, and pour back in. Because at the end of the day, I always like to say, we as women, especially we as Black and brown women, we as believers, we have to be intentional about the seeds that we're planting. And when you have any type of platform, especially when you are an educator showing up in whatever fashion, whatever position, K through 12, training, consulting work, you are you are planting seeds.
absolutely.
You're planting seeds. And I always like to say, it allows me, like, sometimes I'm like, oh God, I don't even know, like, am I really called to still be in education? Because this is different than what I've called for. But then I go back and I remember my foundation. I go back to all of those who came before me. Like, for example, I know my husband, his side of the family in Lawrenceburg, Kentucky, they had the first Black school.
Okay.
So, and it's on his family's land. And so, because back then, the Black kids couldn't go to school with the white kids, so they started their own school. And so you have to understand of knowing your history. You have to understand and knowing that at the end of the day, we all have a part to play. And it's up to how we're going to show up as our authentic selves and be willing to receive what God has and called us to do in this work in this time and season. And I would have to say, Dr. Stewart, you are showing up not only just for yourself, but you're showing up for other women to know that it's okay to take steps of faith. Like, ladies, like I said, she is a faith walker. She is a believer. She trusts God. And we know that there has been some trials and tribulations that have come in their way of taking these risks, of course. But we know that you can always fall back on the word of God and the things that God is speaking into you. So, with that being said, how can the people connect with you, Dr. Stewart?
They can connect with me on LinkedIn. So I'm on there, Dr. Whitney M. Stewart. They can go to my website, which is wmstewartconsulting.com. I also have a YouTube channel, which is WM Stewart Consulting. And yeah, so check me out on those 2 places or 3 places. Yeah, and if you go to one, you'll see it linked to all the other ones. So if you're like, I can only remember the website, okay, the website gonna take you to
And
LinkedIn.
I am going to put those in my show notes, but I will tell you all this, and I'm completely keeping this 100, being very transparent. If you all reach out to Dr. Stewart, just send her an email, asking her a question, or she's going to get back with you.
I will.
She's not one of those people who be like, oh, I saw your email or I read your text. Oh, you hit me up on LinkedIn. You messaged me. Okay. She's literally going to get back with you, and she's going to do her best to make sure that she can either give you the resources or supports to help you. And if she doesn't have the answer, she is going to help you and direct you and guide you so you can get the answer, because that's what she does. That's the type of person she is. So, again, Dr. Whitney Stewart, thank you so much for being on the Hillington podcast. We are so excited. We definitely have to have you come back on the show so you can pour in some more wisdom, especially on that networking piece, because I think that is something that we, no matter what, position or career that you're in, there's so much power in networking that you can share with our listeners.
Thank you so much for having me. And yes, I would love to come back.
All righty. Again, thank you all for tapping into the Hillington podcast. Until next time, be blessed.